The rain hammered relentlessly against the windshield as Darnell Brooks gripped the steering wheel of his aging pickup truck. It was nearly midnight on a Thursday in November, and the streets of Langston Heights, Georgia, were completely deserted. The rhythmic squeaking of the worn-out wipers was the only sound accompanying his exhausted thoughts. Darnell rubbed his burning eyes. Another 12-hour shift at the textile factory, another day of barely making ends meet. Another night, coming home late to his 7-year-old daughter, Imani, who was learning far too young what it meant to have only one parent. His wife, Tasha, had died 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack. One moment, she was laughing at breakfast, teasing him about the way he burned toast every single morning, no matter how carefully he watched it. The next, she was gone. Just like that. No warning, no goodbye, no chance to say the things that mattered. Darnell had been struggling ever since, balancing work and bills and trying to be both mother and father to a little girl who still sometimes asked when Mommy was coming home, her voice small and hopeful in a way that broke his heart every single time. He turned onto Ridgewood Avenue, his mind already on tomorrow's shift, when his headlights caught something that made his foot slam hard on the brake pedal. The truck skidded slightly on the wet pavement, the tires finding uncertain purchase on the slick asphalt. Through the sheets of rain huddled against the bus stop shelter was a figure, small, trembling, barely visible through the downpour. Darnell squinted, his heart suddenly pounding. It was a young woman, soaked completely through, shivering so violently he could see it even from inside his truck. Without a second thought, he pulled over and jumped out into the freezing rain. As he approached, the scene became clearer and more heartbreaking with every step. She wore a thin pink top that clung to her small frame, completely drenched and offering no warmth whatsoever, black shorts that left her legs exposed to the bitter November air. Her long, dark locks were plastered against her brown face, her bare arms were covered in goosebumps, and her teeth were chattering so hard he could hear them clicking over the sound of the rain hitting the pavement. But what stopped Darnell's breath was the worn wooden crutch gripped desperately in her right hand, wedged under her arm, and the way her left leg ended just below the knee. She was sitting on the cold metal bench, her one leg pulled close to her chest, trying to conserve whatever body heat she had left. The crutch looked ancient, splintered in places, held together by what seemed like sheer willpower and nothing else. "Miss?" Darnell called out gently, keeping his distance so he wouldn't frighten her. "Are you okay?" The young woman's head snapped up. Her eyes were wide with fear, red from crying, shadowed with exhaustion, and something deeper that Darnell recognized because he had seen it in his own mirror during the worst months after Tasha died. Hopelessness. She stared at him, her whole body trembling, her knuckles white from gripping that broken crutch. "I'm not going to hurt you," Darnell said, raising his hand slowly. Rain poured down his face, soaking through his jacket and running down his neck. "My name is Darnell. You're going to freeze to death out here. Please let me help you." For a long, terrible moment, she just stared. Darnell could see her mind working, weighing the danger of a stranger against the certainty of hypothermia, calculating risks that no young woman should have to calculate while sitting alone at a bus stop in the middle of the night. Finally, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Darnell moved carefully. "Can you stand?" She tried, using the crutch to push herself up, but her body was shaking so badly she nearly fell. Darnell caught her arm gently, steadying her with the kind of careful strength that came from years of catching his daughter when she stumbled. "Easy. I've got you." Together, they made their way slowly to the truck. She leaned heavily on the crutch, each step clearly painful, the broken padding digging into her underarm with every movement. Darnell opened the passenger door and helped her climb in, his heart breaking at how light she felt, how fragile, how much she reminded him of a bird that had been caught in a storm. He took the wet crutch from her trembling hands and placed it carefully in the back seat. Inside the truck, He cranked the heat to maximum and grabbed an old blanket from behind the seat, the one he kept there for emergencies, wrapping it around her shaking shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Jade," she managed through chattering teeth. Her lips were turning ashy from the cold. "Jade, I'm Darnell. Where do you live? Can I take you home?" And that's when the tears came. Not just a few, but a flood of them streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater, accompanied by sobs that shook her entire body with a force that seemed too powerful for her small frame to contain. "I don't have anywhere," she choked out. "My stepbrother, he left me here. He said I was worthless, that I couldn't work, couldn't contribute. He said he was done taking care of dead weight." Darnell felt anger surge through his chest, hot and fierce, the kind of anger that made his hands grip the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. "How long have you been out here?" Jade's voice was barely a whisper. "Since yesterday morning." "Yesterday?" Darnell's voice rose despite himself. "You've been sitting in the rain for over 24 hours?" She nodded, fresh tears spilling. "I thought maybe he'd come back. We were just going to the store. That's what he said. That's why I'm dressed like this. It was warm inside his car. I only grabbed my crutch as he was pushing me out. I didn't even have time to get shoes that fit properly or a jacket or my phone. He just drove away." Darnell looked at her inadequate clothing with new horror. She'd been dressed for a quick errand in a heated car, not abandoned in a November rainstorm, with no way to walk to safety and no one to call for help. "You're coming with me," he said firmly. "We'll get you warm and fed. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what to do. But tonight, you're safe. Okay?" Jade looked at him like she couldn't quite believe he was real. Then she nodded, and for the first time, Darnell saw a tiny flicker of hope in her eyes, fragile as a candle flame in a strong wind, but there. When Darnell pulled up to his modest apartment building 20 minutes later, he helped Jade out carefully, retrieving her crutch from the back. She moved slowly, clearly exhausted, leaning heavily on the wooden support as they made their way to the entrance. Inside, Mrs. Atkinson, the elderly babysitter who lived 2 doors down and had been watching Imani since Tasha passed, looked up from her knitting and gasped. "Darnell? Good heavens, what happened?" "I found her at a bus stop on Ridgewood," Darnell said quietly, helping Jade to the couch. "She's been out in the rain for over a day. Can you find some warm clothes while I make some tea?" Mrs. Atkinson immediately sprang into action with the efficiency of a woman who had raised 6 children of her own, disappearing into Darnell's bedroom and returning with thick sweatpants, a warm sweater, and wool socks. "Come on, dear," she said gently to Jade. "Let's get you out of those wet things." While Mrs. Atkinson helped Jade change in the bathroom, Darnell made hot tea and threw together a simple meal. Soup and bread, nothing fancy, but warm and filling, the kind of food that could bring a person back to life when they'd been sitting in the cold for a day and a half. A small voice came from the hallway. "Daddy?" Imani appeared, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her stuffed rabbit dragging on the floor. Her braids were messy from sleep, and she wore her favorite pajamas with stars on them. "Hey, baby girl, what are you doing up?" I heard voices. Her eyes went wide when she saw Jade emerge from the bathroom in dry clothes, Mrs. Atkinson carrying her wet things to the dryer. Jade's crutch was leaning against the wall next to the couch. "Who's that?" "This is Jade, sweetheart. She needs our help tonight. She's going to stay with us." Imani tilted her head, studying Jade with the unfiltered curiosity of a 7-year-old. "How come you only have one leg?" "Imani," Darnell started, but Jade held up a hand. "It's okay." She managed a small smile. "I had an accident at work a few years ago, but I'm okay. See?" She gestured to her crutch. "I can still get around. Does it hurt?" "Sometimes. But not as much as being cold and alone." Imani seemed to process this with the serious concentration she applied to everything from math homework to deciding which cartoon to watch. Then she walked over and held out her stuffed rabbit. Mr. Whiskers always makes me feel better when I'm sad. You can hold him if you want. Jade's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different, softer, warmer. Thank you, sweetie. That's very kind. After Mrs. Atkinson left, Darnell sat with Jade while she ate. Imani had finally gone back to bed, but not before making Jade promise she'd still be there in the morning. You don't have to tell me everything tonight, Darnell said gently, but I need to know. Are you in danger? Is someone looking for you? Jade shook her head. No one's looking for me. That's the problem. No one cares enough to look. And slowly, painfully, the story came out. Her mother, Lorraine, had died from complications of a severe stroke when Jade was 16. Her father had remarried quickly, too quickly, to a woman named Patricia, who had a son from a previous marriage named Deshawn. My dad tried, Jade said quietly. He really did. But Patricia never wanted me around. I was a reminder that he'd had a whole other life before her. When Jade was 19, she'd been working at a warehouse trying to save money for college. One day, a forklift operator made a mistake. Pallets came crashing down. Jade's leg was crushed beyond repair. I was in the hospital for weeks, multiple surgeries. They tried to save it, but she gestured to where her leg ended. Eventually, they had to amputate below the knee. During her recovery, her father had a massive heart attack. He died before the ambulance arrived. Patricia came to the hospital the day after the funeral. She told Jade she had 1 week to get her things and get out. I was still learning to use crutches. I couldn't even walk properly yet. Jade's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Deshawn took me in, but he never let me forget it was charity. Every day he'd remind me that I was costing him money, taking up space, that I was useless. For 2 years she'd endured his verbal abuse, his resentment, his constant reminders that she was a burden. She'd tried to find work, but with no car, limited mobility, and no support system, opportunities were scarce. 3 days ago, he just snapped. I was sitting on the couch in my pink top and black shorts because it was warm inside. He came home from work already angry, started yelling about how he was done, how I was dead weight, how I'd never amount to anything. Jade's hands trembled as she held the warm mug of tea. He grabbed my arm and dragged me to the car. I managed to grab my crutch because I can't walk without it, but he wouldn't let me get anything else. Not a jacket, not my phone, not my documents, nothing. He drove across town. I kept asking where we were going. He wouldn't answer. Then he pulled up to that bus stop, told me to get out. When I hesitated, he shoved me. I stumbled out with just my crutch, and he drove away. I stood there watching his tail lights disappear, holding this broken crutch, wearing summer clothes in November. Darnell's jaw clenched. You waited there for a whole day. I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that he'd cool down and come back. As it got dark, I knew. But by then I was too cold, too tired to figure out where to go. The crutch hurts my arm after a while. It's old and the padding is worn through. I tried to walk to find help, but I couldn't go far. She looked down. I tried using a payphone to call shelters, but they were all full. I had no money, no identification, no phone. Deshawn kept all my documents at his place. I didn't even know exactly where I was. I just sat there waiting for anything, anyone. This young woman, barely in her 20s, had lost everything. Her mother, her father, her leg, her home, her dignity. And when she needed help most, she'd been thrown away. You're staying here, Darnell said firmly. At least until we figure something out. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm telling you. His voice was gentle, but firm. I have a spare room. It's small, but it's warm and it's safe. You've been through enough. Jade looked at him like she couldn't quite believe he was real. Then she nodded, and for the first time, Darnell saw that tiny flicker of hope in her eyes grow just slightly brighter. The next morning, Darnell called social services. A caseworker named Mr. Prescott arrived that afternoon, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a worn briefcase. "Mr. Brooks, what you did was very compassionate," Mr. Prescott said, sitting across from Darnell in the small living room. Jade sat nearby, her crutch leaning against the arm of the chair. "But Miss Harper is an adult. Our services for adults are quite limited. I can provide information about shelters and assistance programs, but honestly, most have waiting lists of several months." "Months," Darnell repeated. Mr. Prescott sighed. "We're underfunded and overwhelmed. I wish I could offer more, but that's the reality." Jade stared down at her hands. "It's okay. I'll figure something out. I always do." But Darnell looked at this young woman who'd been abandoned in freezing rain with nothing but a broken crutch and clothes meant for a summer day. He thought about Imani, who'd already asked that morning when Miss Jade would teach her to braid hair the way she'd promised. "What if she stayed here temporarily?" Darnell asked. "I have that spare room. It's not much, but it's warm and safe." Mr. Prescott raised his eyebrows. "That's very generous, Mr. Brooks, but you should know there's no financial assistance for informal arrangements like this." Darnell nodded slowly. "I understand." After Mr. Prescott left, Jade turned to Darnell with tears in her eyes. "You can't do this. You're already struggling. I've seen the bills on your counter. You work 12-hour shifts. You can barely afford—" "Stop," Darnell said gently. "Yes, money is tight. Yes, I work long hours, but I have a roof over my head, food in my fridge, and a daughter who needs to see that we help people when they need it. You need help. So you're staying." Over the next few weeks, Darnell's small apartment became something it hadn't been in 2 years. A home. Jade was terrified of being a burden. She'd wake up before Darnell, moving quietly through the apartment with her crutch, cleaning everything in sight. She'd prepare breakfast with whatever ingredients were available, learning to balance on one leg while holding onto counters, always keeping her crutch within arm's reach. She'd pack lunches for both Darnell and Imani. She'd do laundry. She'd have dinner ready when Darnell came home from his shift, exhausted and covered in lint from the textile factory. "You don't have to do all this," Darnell told her one evening, finding her scrubbing the bathroom floor while balancing on her crutch. "I need to contribute somehow," Jade replied, not meeting his eyes. "You've given me so much. This is all I can offer. You're not a maid, Jade. You're a person who deserves rest and recovery." But Jade couldn't stop. Her entire life she'd been told she was worthless, a burden, dead weight. The only way she knew to prove her value was through service, through making herself indispensable, through working until her arms ached from the crutch and her body screamed for rest. One Saturday morning, Darnell made an announcement. "Get ready. We're going shopping." "Shopping?" Jade looked confused. "For what?" "For you. You need more than one outfit." "Darnell, I can't let you spend money on—" "Not asking," he said with a smile. "Let's go." At the thrift store on Clarkston Road, Darnell helped Jade pick out several outfits. Jeans, shirts, a warm jacket. But he also grabbed something else. A pink top and black shorts, similar to what she'd been wearing that rainy night. Jade stared at them. "Why would you buy me those?" Darnell looked at her seriously. "Because those clothes don't have to be a bad memory. You can make new memories in them, on a warm summer day. Wearing these by choice, not because you were abandoned in them. That's taking your power back." Jade's eyes filled with tears, but Darnell wasn't done. At a medical supply store, he purchased a proper adjustable crutch with comfortable padding and a sturdy rubber tip. "This one won't hurt your arm," he said, showing her the cushioned grip. "And it's adjustable, so it'll fit you perfectly." Jade held the new crutch, testing its weight, feeling the soft padding beneath her arm instead of the splintered wood that had been digging into her skin for years. "No one has ever cared about things like this for me." "Well, someone does now," Darnell said simply. Imani became utterly devoted to Jade. The 7-year-old had found someone who had infinite patience for her endless questions, her games, her stories about school. Jade would help with homework, sitting at the kitchen table with Imani, her crutch leaning nearby, explaining math problems with a kindness and patience that made learning feel safe instead of stressful. She'd braid Imani's hair in the mornings before school, creating elaborate designs that made the little girl beam with pride when she walked into her classroom. She'd tell stories at bedtime when Darnell worked late shifts, tales of brave princesses and kind dragons, nothing like the harsh reality she'd lived. One night Darnell came home to find Imani asleep on the couch, her head in Jade's lap. Jade was stroking the girl's hair gently, her crutch on the floor beside them. "She was waiting up for you," Jade whispered. "Finally dozed off about 20 minutes ago." Darnell felt his throat tighten. This scene, this simple, domestic, beautiful scene, it felt like family. Meanwhile, Darnell helped Jade navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of replacing her documents. Birth certificate, social security card, state ID. All still at Deshawn's place, all refused when Jade tried to contact him. "We'll get new ones," Darnell promised. "It'll take time, but we'll get them." He drove her to the Social Security office on his day off, waited in line for 3 hours, helped her fill out forms. He took her to the Disability Services office where they applied for assistance and got information about prosthetics clinics. "There's a clinic about 40 minutes from here," the counselor said. "They work on a sliding scale. With your situation, you might qualify for a donated prosthetic." Jade's face lit up with hope. "Really? I could walk without a crutch eventually?" "Yes. It takes time to adjust, but yes." Darnell drove her to every appointment, waited in lobbies, asked questions when Jade was too overwhelmed to speak. Slowly, painfully, Jade began to rebuild. She enrolled in online college courses in accounting, something she'd always been good with numbers. She found part-time remote work doing data entry, just a few hours a week, but it was income, her own income. "I got paid today," she told Darnell one evening, her voice trembling with emotion. She held up her phone showing the direct deposit notification. "It's not much, but it's mine. I earned it." Darnell smiled. "I'm proud of you." 3 months after that rainy night, Jade got fitted for a prosthetic leg. The first time she stood on it, she cried. The first time she took steps without her crutch, she sobbed. But she kept both crutches, the broken wooden one from that terrible night and the good one Darnell bought her, in her closet. Reminders of where she'd been and who had helped her rise. Life settled into a rhythm. Darnell worked. Jade studied and worked remotely. Imani thrived with 2 adults who loved her. They were becoming something neither Darnell nor Jade had expected, a family. But then something strange began to happen. Darnell first noticed it on a Tuesday evening. A black luxury car, expensive, sleek, completely out of place in their working-class neighborhood, was parked across the street from their apartment building. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. Darnell didn't think much of it at first. Maybe someone visiting a neighbor. But the car appeared again on Thursday and Saturday, always parked in the same spot, always with someone inside, though Darnell couldn't make out their features through the tinted windows. "That car is back," Jade said one evening, peering through the curtains. Then one afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Darnell answered it cautiously. Standing in the hallway was a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, silver hair, perfectly styled, polished shoes. An air of wealth and authority surrounded him like cologne. But his eyes were sad. Deeply, unmistakably sad. "Mr. Brooks?" the man asked, his voice cultured and careful. "Yes. My name is Raymond Okafor." He paused as if the next words were difficult. "I believe you've been caring for a young woman named Jade Harper." Darnell's entire body tensed. "Who are you?" "I'm Jade's uncle," Raymond said quietly, "her mother's older brother. May I come in? I promise I mean no harm. In fact, I've been searching for her for 4 months." Darnell didn't move from the doorway. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Raymond reached slowly into his jacket pocket, and Darnell's hand instinctively moved toward his phone. Raymond pulled out a leather wallet. From it, he withdrew several photographs. The first showed a young woman who looked remarkably like Jade standing beside Raymond. Both were smiling, much younger. "That's my sister Lorraine," Raymond said softly. "Jade's mother. This was taken about 20 years ago, before we stopped speaking." He showed another photo, a family portrait. Lorraine, a man who must have been Jade's father, and a little girl with dark hair and bright, curious eyes. "That's Jade when she was about 5, Raymond continued. "I know I'm a stranger to you, Mr. Brooks, but I promise I'm family, and I've been desperately trying to find her." Reluctantly, Darnell stepped aside. "Jade is here, but if you upset her—" "I understand," Raymond said quickly. "I just want to talk." They sat in the living room. Jade was out with Imani at the park. Darnell had encouraged them to get fresh air, wanting an hour to catch up on chores. He was now grateful for that decision, giving him time to assess this stranger before exposing Jade to him. "Why are you here?" Darnell asked bluntly. "And was that you in the black car?" Raymond had the grace to look embarrassed. "Yes, that was me. I apologize for the intrusion, but I needed to observe before I approached. I needed to be absolutely certain Jade was safe." "Start from the beginning. Who are you and where have you been?" Raymond's face filled with pain. "My sister Lorraine and I had a terrible falling out 15 years ago over our parents' estate. It was ugly. Things were said that couldn't be taken back. She cut off all contact, changed her phone number, moved. I tried to reach out a few times over the years, but she refused to see me." He paused, his voice thick. "I didn't know she'd died. I didn't know about Jade's accident or that she'd lost her leg. I didn't know about her father's death or that she'd been living with an abusive stepbrother. I knew nothing." "How did you find out?" "About 4 months ago, I received a letter from Lorraine's former neighbor, a woman named Mrs. Freeman. She'd kept my address from years ago. She wrote that she'd been trying to find information about Jade, that she'd heard concerning rumors about her situation." Raymond pulled out a worn envelope. Mrs. Freeman wrote that she'd seen Jade at her father's funeral on crutches, looking devastated. But when she tried to check on her later, she discovered Patricia had kicked her out. She'd been trying to track Jade down for years, and when she finally learned that Deshawn had taken her in, she heard through the neighborhood that he was treating her terribly. "I hired investigators immediately," Raymond continued. "It took 6 weeks just to track down Deshawn. When I finally confronted him," Raymond's hands clenched into fists. He laughed. He actually laughed. He said he'd gotten rid of her weeks before, said he'd tossed her out of his car with nothing but an old crutch and the clothes on her back. Darnell felt cold rage wash through him. "I've been searching everywhere for months," Raymond said. "Shelters, hospitals, police stations. I filed missing person reports. But because Jade is an adult and there was no evidence of foul play, they couldn't do much. I hired more investigators, spent a small fortune following dead ends." He looked at Darnell with genuine gratitude. "Then one of my investigators discovered that a man matching your description had brought a young woman matching Jade's description to this address 4 months ago. I couldn't believe it." Raymond's voice cracked. "I've been watching for 3 weeks because I needed to be certain. I needed to see that whoever had her wasn't hurting her. I watched you leave for work every morning, watched you come home exhausted, saw you at the grocery store with her and your daughter, the way you all laughed together, saw Jade walking with a proper prosthetic, not just that broken crutch." He met Darnell's eyes. "I saw that she was safe, that she was loved, that she had what I couldn't find for months, a home." Darnell studied this man carefully. "What do you want?" Raymond took a deep breath. "Mr. Brooks, I'm a wealthy man. I own Okafor Capital Group. I could provide Jade with everything money can buy. A beautiful apartment, the best prosthetics, full tuition for any school she wants, financial security for life." Darnell felt his heart sinking. Of course, this rich uncle would take Jade away, give her the life Darnell could never afford. But Raymond continued, and his next words shocked Darnell completely. "But Mr. Brooks, I've been watching you for 3 weeks. I've seen you leave for work at 5 in the morning. I've seen you at the grocery store carefully counting money, putting items back because they were too expensive. I've seen the way your truck struggles to start. I've seen how tired you are." Raymond's eyes were bright with emotion. "And I've seen the way Jade looks at you, the way your daughter holds her hand, the way you all move together like you've been a family for years, not months. I've seen something my money could never buy." He leaned forward. "So I'm not here to take her away. I'm here to ask you what's best for Jade. Because I lost my sister because of pride and stubbornness. I let 15 years pass without reconciling. I missed her entire adult life. Missed meeting my niece. Missed being there when she lost her leg and her father. I won't make the same mistake again." Darnell stared at him. "You're not going to try to take her?" "I want to be in her life," Raymond said. "I want to help her, support her, be the uncle I should have been all along. But I think the choice should be hers. And I think she's already found what she needs most, people who see her as family, not as a burden." At that moment, the door opened. Jade and Imani came in laughing about something. Jade was walking confidently on her prosthetic, barely limping. She stopped dead when she saw Raymond. "Who?" she started. Then her eyes went wide. "Uncle Ray?" Raymond stood slowly, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, Jade. You probably don't remember me. You were only 5 the last time." The conversation that followed was long, emotional, and healing. Jade sat on the couch, her prosthetic leg stretched out comfortably. Raymond sat across from her, and piece by piece he explained everything: the falling out with her mother, the years of silence, the letter from Mrs. Freeman, the desperate search, the confrontation with Deshawn, who'd admitted everything without remorse. "He said you were worthless," Raymond said, his voice shaking with anger. "He bragged about leaving you with nothing." Jade's hand went to Darnell's, squeezing tight. I almost did freeze. If Darnell hadn't... "I know," Raymond said, "and I can never repay that debt." He looked at Darnell. "You saved her life. You gave her a home when she had nothing. You treated her like family when her actual family abandoned her." Over the next few hours, a new understanding formed. Raymond didn't try to take Jade away. Instead, he offered support. Financial help for her education, connections for better job opportunities, a standing invitation to visit his home, and most importantly, family. "I know I can't make up for 15 years, he said. "I know I wasn't there when you needed me most. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life now, as your uncle, as family." Jade looked at Darnell, then at Imani, then back at Raymond. "I'd like that," she said softly. "But this is my home now. Darnell and Imani, they're my family too." "I wouldn't dream of changing that," Raymond said quickly. "In fact, I'd like to help make sure this family stays strong." True to his word, Raymond became Uncle Ray. He visited regularly, not intrusively, but consistently. Sunday dinners became a tradition. He and Darnell, despite their vastly different backgrounds, developed an unexpected friendship built on mutual respect and shared love for Jade. Raymond helped with expenses, not as charity, but as family support. He paid for Jade's college tuition. He helped Darnell get his truck repaired properly. He set up funds for both Jade and Imani, but he never tried to control or dictate. He'd learned his lesson about pride and control from losing 15 years with his sister. Jade chose to stay with Darnell and Imani for another year. She graduated from her online program with honors, got a job at a respected accounting firm, and eventually moved into her own apartment just 15 minutes away. She still came for dinner 3 times a week. 2 years after that rainy November night, Jade arrived at Darnell's apartment for a special celebration. She was wearing a pink top and black shorts, the ones Darnell had bought her at the thrift store on Clarkston Road. Not the ones she'd been abandoned in, but close enough to honor the journey. She stood confidently on her prosthetic leg, having long since mastered walking without assistance. But in her hand, she carried something special. The old wooden crutch from that terrible night, now cleaned and preserved, treated with wood oil and care. Imani, now 9 years old, saw it first. "You brought the old crutch. Why?" Jade smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "Because today is special. I graduated today, top of my class. I got a job offer at Henderson and Associates. Great salary, benefits, everything. And Uncle Ray was there at the graduation ceremony cheering louder than anyone." She looked at Darnell. "But none of that would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night. If you hadn't taken a chance on a stranger in the rain who had nothing but a broken crutch and summer clothes in November." She held up the preserved crutch. "This crutch was all I had that night. It was falling apart, just like I was. But you didn't just give me shelter, Darnell. You gave me a new crutch, new clothes, new hope. You showed me what real family looks like." From her bag, she pulled out an envelope and handed it to Darnell. "This is for Imani's college fund. It's not much compared to what you've given me, but it's from my first paycheck. Because you taught me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest, who sees you shivering in the rain with nothing but a broken crutch and says, 'I'll help you.'" Darnell's eyes filled with tears. He pulled Jade into a tight embrace. Imani wrapped her arms around both of them. In the doorway, Uncle Raymond stood watching, his own eyes wet. He'd spent 15 years estranged from his sister, missing everything. But he'd found his way back through this unlikely family. A struggling single dad, an abandoned young woman, and a little girl who taught them all what unconditional love looked like. "Thank you," Jade whispered into Darnell's shoulder. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for giving me a chance when everyone else saw me as worthless. Thank you for teaching me that my value isn't in what I can do, or whether I have 2 legs or 1. It's in who I am." Darnell held her tighter. "You were never worthless, Jade. Never. And I didn't save you. We saved each other." That old wooden crutch now hung on Darnell's wall, a reminder of the night their lives changed forever. Next to it, a photograph of their blended family. Darnell, Imani, Jade, and Uncle Raymond, all smiling in the warm light of a Sunday afternoon. Below it, a small plaque that Jade had made with words that captured everything they had learned together and everything they wanted to remember on the days when the world felt cold and the rain felt endless and hope felt like something other people were allowed to have, but not them. Family isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's found in the rain, in the cold, in the moments when someone chooses to stop and say you matter, you're worth saving, you belong.